I like to say, back when the world was right. Since then, people have continued to go onwards and upwards. Congratulations, you know who you are. We'll probably all know who you are because you'll be the one tapping your helmet against the roof of the mine. Having said that, I'm going to put my helmet on or else I will forget. So I know where all the low spots are. I know where every single one of them is. I've found every one of them over my time here. And I will do my best to call them out to you. And I'll also try not to snicker overtly when you guys tap your helmets against the roof anyway. In mining parlance, that is referred to as ringing the bell. We're going to walk in a single file line up and down the center of the tracks. Please do not touch or take anything from the mine. What I really don't want you touching at all are these stalactite formations that grow from the roof and the walls of the mine. If you touch these stalactites, it inhibits their future growth, so please do not do that. Our stalactites are not particularly impressive to look at. Geologically speaking, they have just been born. If you go to a limestone cavern, that cavern is millions of years old. The oldest one we have in here is 155, so obviously they've had a bit of a head start. If any one of you gets underground and determines you don't like being underground, not your cup of tea, at that point, all you have to do is turn on your heel, walk back out of the mine. The only thing I'm going to request is if you take that action, inform me of it first. I'm taking 16 people underground. If 2 of you sneak out and I don't realize till I get outside, and I got 14, the rules say I got to go back underground and look for 2 people who are likely not there. So in that case, I will go back underground, but all I'm going to do is go up to the first tour I encounter and steal 2 of their people. Don't need the same 16 people, just need 16 people. It's been a great loophole. Tina, don't ever let them change that. Yeah. It's why I'm still here. Yeah. In stone. Carve it out. All right. I don't see that anyone's really loaded down with carrying stuff, so that's good. All right. Are you folks ready to get underground?
Yeah.
All right. That was mildly enthusiastic. Very mildly enthusiastic. I used to work at a funeral home, and I'd ask the guy in the slab the same question, and it sounded almost the same. The one time the guy did talk back, that told me embalming had really screwed up. But let me try it again. Are you people ready to get underground?
Yeah!
Woo-hoo! All right, now I'm leading Marines into a mine shaft. Let's get rolling. All right, let's start heading in. Now, if you're taller than me, this is a good spot to start looking up. This beam right here, kind of on the low side. Maybe this one right here also. Maybe this one.
I heard that. Somebody hit.
I'm going to pause you out here for a moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That the men built to protect themselves from outside elements. The way you create a portal like this is you excavate the hillsides, you put up the sideboards, then you put up the wooden uprights, and then you take the steel cart tracks and you put the cart tracks up on top of the uprights. Collectively, this process is called spiling. And what spiling provides you is a steel safety ceiling overhead. Then as you start to jack and blast your way into the mountainside, that tends to agitate the slope and cause rock slides to occur. The rocks come down here, but the rocks and the rubble end up becoming the roof of the portal. They're kept away from us by that spiling system. If the rocks are able to get past the spiling, that would be an opportunity for a minor headache. I'm here all week, folks. No, it'll get worse.
Yeah.
Up front, this is what we call the bald face. The bald face is silver plume granite. It's extremely hard rock and was very difficult for the men to get through it using the methods they had. But on the positive side, the rock's got a lot of structural integrity. What that means is even though this arch form was put in place back in 1870, it is still viable today, or it has been so far. I always like to give it a quick test before I go in. Give me just a minute. All right, that crack doesn't seem like it got a lot worse. we should be okay. It's a fairly low height for about 8 steps, then the ceiling picks up and we'll be able to stand upright again. So let's start heading in, folks. Okay. Can I see that light for a moment?
Sure.
Let's see how it's stacking up to mine. And yeah, it's okay. I'm going to trade you this one if you don't mind.
Sure.
The one I'm giving you is terrible. It's bright, but it doesn't say.
Oh, yeah, I
Yep.
see it.
If you want a strobe light effect, you got it.
Got it.
So, all right, folks, you guys are all walking through level 3 of a 6-level mine. Level 3 is the ground floor. It's the main, it's the only entrance and exit to the mine. It is the main conveyance tunnel. It's the most excavated out of all the tunnels. There are 2 tunnels running beneath us right now, and eventually, as the topography increases, there'll be 3 tunnels up above us. All the tunnels are stacked up in parallel with about 60 feet of silver plume granite between them. This is a horizontal shaft, but it's not flat. As we're walking inwards, we're walking upwards. There's a 2% grade built into every step you take here. At one point, this tunnel was longer than a mile, and that 2% grade never faltered. So you can see the water in the ditch is leaving. It's going outwards. We don't have to pump this water to make that happen. Gravity empties the mine for us. It's a really good design because this way the water never pools up and floods the tunnels. The water in the ditch served as the men's drinking water supply, while at the same time the ditch also functioned as their bathroom. Yeah, that was multitasking at its all-time worst. And I like to point out to people, because of my vindictive nature, that the water in the P ditch, and by the way, no, they didn't call it the P ditch. We kind of Disneyfied that just a little bit. Use your imagination. The water in the P ditch empties the mine and it flows into Clear Creek on the other side of the buildings. Clear Creek then makes a direct downhill run to Golden, Colorado, which is known as being the home of a brewing establishment of some sort. This unnamed Golden-based Rocky Mountain stream utilizing can stir color and temperature brewery was approached by me about 8 years ago to sponsor my tour, and they said no. So I've enjoyed telling this story up to 4 times a day for the past 8 years.
That's what gives it the flavor of the beer.
Yeah.
If I'm ever brought to court, I will point out that A, history supports my claim, and B, I was not the one that came up with that unfortunate but not historically inaccurate nickname. I rest my case. So on either side of the main tunnel, we've got these 2 sets of side or drift tunnels. And they call these drift tunnels because this is where, for the first time, the men discovered what they were looking for, which is argentiferous galena, which is Latin for silver-bearing ore. Now, when you find gold, it's already gold. You don't have to change it much, it's already gold. When you find silver ore, it looks nothing like the finished product of silver. It's not silver colored, it doesn't sparkle. What you're looking for is a black or dark gray rock or a streak of mineral running through this lighter gray rock. And once you determine that is what you're looking at, which it was on both sides here, different men would come into the tunnel and create these side tunnels while the main tunnel was always being pushed forward every single shift. On that side, the drift of silver ran out relatively quickly. On this side, the drift stayed straight, very straight for a drift. They tend to meander all over the place, which is why they were referred to as a drift. This one went straight back, but when it got to the back, it doubled back and it snaked up. So that's why the men did overhead excavation here. Typically, the only reason why men would ever drill upwards as opposed to directly in front of them was if they were knowingly following a drift of silver. In which case, they would follow it until they exhausted the drift or the world ended, whichever came first. And what also happens here is a vertical shaft goes straight down for about 60 feet or so. That's called the winze. That's how you gain access to the tunnel beneath us. Now, when the mine was operating, Mr. Pooley, the operator, had steam-driven pumps that would compress air. The compressed air would be piped into the lower tunnels, and that would force the majority of the standing water to go up the vertical shafts and into these horizontals where they will drain out on their own. When the mine shut down for good in 1896, the pump shut down also, and in the ensuing time, the groundwater has risen right up to the surface. So at this point, all of the lower tunnels and the winches are completely submerged. So we're gonna keep our tour to the third level here. Did anyone bring a wetsuit? Did anyone really read that website? Which I'm fine with. The only thing I hate worse than being immersed in cold water is actual fire. And to me, they're pretty similar. So I'm gonna take you forward. I've never seen the movie Titanic because I know how it ends.
Yeah.
All right, folks, so we come upon drift tunnel number 2, which is only about 15 feet from drift tunnel number 1. And simply the fact that these gentlemen uncovered 2 harvestable veins of silver within 200 feet of their initial horizontal drilling was remarkably fortunate. These guys were making money very much ahead of schedule. What we also have here is a vertical shaft, goes about 90 feet straight up. It's called a rise. This doesn't break the surface of the mountain so that nothing comes down on us from above. But 2 of the 3 upper tunnels will intersect with this rise. And if they want to get rock out from the upper tunnel, whether it's waste rock or good ore, they simply put a cart right here on the tracks, drop the rocks into the cart, push the cart downhill out of the mine. Another reason for that 2% grade, it's a whole lot easier to push 500 pounds of rock down a hill than it is to do so on a level surface. Some people think 2% doesn't make much of a difference. I can assure you it does. It makes it possible. The gentleman in there is JJ. He's a powder monkey. A powder monkey is a boy. He's either a miner's son or a male orphan between the age of 12 and 14. He brings the dynamite in and out of the mine as is necessary. So to really paint this picture, you got a 13-year-old boy carrying a box of dynamite. He is about to walk over an open vertical 60-foot pit, and he's doing that by walking on a board. When he gets to the end of the board, he'll scramble up that very steep earthen slope using just his feet because he's carrying a box. And with any luck, none of that will go horrifically wrong. And he's doing every step of that in the absolute complete darkness because these electric lights didn't exist. All you had for illumination back then were candles. And when they give you a box of dynamite, you don't get to have the candle. Yeah. So everything I've just said is, by modern standards and law, is horrifically wrong and illegal. Yeah. But up until 1896, there were no laws whatsoever that governed what you could or could not do in a mine. And this mine closed in 1896 as soon as that law was passed. I don't think they were connected, it just sort of happened. So I'm going to take you forward here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to yell them out. There's another side tunnel here, means they found evidence of argentiferous galena presenting right here. So they chased it and it petered out relatively quickly. They also started drilling on this side of the tunnel, but it petered out right away, so they stopped. This wet waxy mineral is calcite carbonate, which is the mineral that comprises the stalactites. If it finds an overhang, it'll make a stalactite. Otherwise, it just runs down the wall like it's doing here. So I'm going to keep walking you forward. From this point forward, they didn't encounter any more veins running east-west, so we're just going to walk straight through the north-south tunnel. And there's a bell. So there's this really flat section right here. When you're standing right underneath this flat roof, you are 200 feet beneath I-70.
Oh, wow.
So when the mine was created, this highway was probably 100 years in the future. There was probably a road because it's a mountain pass. But yeah, if we could go up 200 feet to the Silver Plume granite, we would be standing in the westbound lane of I-70. And you will be able to tell your friends and family that you've been run over repeatedly today. We're starting to see a lot of stalactite activity in both the roof, the spine of the mine, and also the walls here. Where you see these stalactites that are dripping steadily, they're being created at a very quick pace. We came back here 400 years from now, they'd be twice as long. We're gonna, whoa. That doesn't happen much. It almost never happens. I forget that guy's there. So we're going to turn a corner here. If you're taller than me, as you turn the corner, please look up. There is a low-lying wooden beam right here, and I call this guy Jimmy. If you're not paying attention, Jim Beam will take you right off your feet. School groups love that joke. 60 kids just tall. They're all laughing.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you even know that?
Right.
So let me take you forward to here.
It's the only time it needs to be short.
Right.
It used to be submarine service also. But since World War II, submarines have gotten quite a bit bigger, so it's not really that much of an issue anymore. Let's take a few steps in here. I should be able to get everyone out the hallway into the actual hoist room. Very good. So they call this the hoist room because of this large machine behind me. This is a rotating drum hoist. It was manufactured in Georgetown. The final assembly took place here. It was left in the mine, which makes a little bit of sense because they'd have to completely disassemble it to take it out. But they also left the Widowmaker drill. You just walk past that right there. They left that Widowmaker in here, which strikes me as amazing. Back then, that was a brand new piece of technology. It was cutting edge technology, every sense of the word. And it was left here in the mine to rust and become useless, which kind of strikes me like buying a Learjet, flying it twice, parking it in a cave and walking away. Why would you do that? Do not know. The tall people like the hoist room because we've got a lot of headroom in here. And we have headroom in here for the exact same reason as the first drift. They determined there was a vein of argentiferous galena, silver-bearing ore, that was running east-west across the ceiling. So once they determined that, they built scaffolding, they got up there, and they excavated it, and they did a much better job than the first drift. In the first drift, there's all kinds of that gray rock left, which is argentiferous galena. But they didn't leave a scrap of it in here, so I think they had gotten better at shaving it off. And up there where the lights are changing, that looks like a cave opening. You guys see that? Mm-hmm. So that's not a cave. A cave is a naturally occurring open space. That is a created chamber. When the guys got beyond that, they found what they called the Morning Star lode, which was the biggest silver single strike in the mine's history. That one strike accounted for more than half the money they made here between 1870 and 1896. And they took so much mineral out from that upper area. When you find argentiferous, a lot of times it's not just a solid rock of argentiferous. Typically, it's a vein or band that goes through that rock. So when you take a rock outside, maybe 10% of the mass of that rock is actually useful argentiferous, and the rest of it is just granite that you're going to crush, drop on the ground, and forget about forever. But they took so much rock out of there, what they left behind was a large open chamber called the ballroom. And the ballroom's about 100 feet from floor to ceiling, about 60 feet wide, maybe 80 feet long. Carved out of solid granite, just like all this. Tremendous undertaking. Where I got my light shining, there you see there's a blue splotch right there? It's kind of a weak flashlight. If someone's got a better beam, there you go. Why don't I have a good flight? That stalactite is blue. Typically they're white, but that one has been infused with both copper and or zinc. That gives it that blue coloration. Typically underground, everything is very monochromatic because there's no natural light here. Everything's just 1.5 million shades of gray. The wall behind you is a good example of the stalactites. That white mineral is calcite carbonate. When the rainwater comes downwards, if it brings the mineral for a ride and it finds an overhang, it will create a stalactite that reaches downwards. Otherwise, it is just running down the wall like it's doing right in front of you. Now, if you guys want to touch that lower wall, you can do that here. It's one of the only spots I'll tell you it's okay to touch a wall. People have been touching that wall for generations, and it's not in a stalactite form, so that's why it's okay. The guys that worked here would call that miner's snot. It's kind of what it looks and feels like. It doesn't taste the same. It doesn't have enough sodium.
Gross.
And I know that because I've licked that wall on several different occasions. And I should probably tell you why I would do that. Does anyone here use Tums or Rolaids? Those are wild Tums growing up there. Calcite carbonate is a natural antacid, and the men knew it. And back then, when you go underground, you stay underground for your entire 10-hour shift. You can't leave early because you got a stomachache. So what the men learned is if they did have stomach issues, they could break off a tip of a stalactite, put that little tip underneath their tongue, it would gradually dissolve, and that would drop calcium down into their stomach, which neutralizes stomach acid. And the reason I'm telling you guys this is if any one of you currently have a stomach ache, and you want to feel better, all you got to do is lick that wall. And I want to point out to you, I've been doing this for 8 seasons. When I started here, they gave me a paper with some suggested talking points. This was not on there. I came up with this routine on my own. It's been a fun time. In fact, it's been borderline hysterical. As of my last tour, I have now talked 121 adult men into licking that wall.
Yes.
I don't even count the kids, they'll just do it.
They probably.
But what I'm most proud of is the number of adult women I've talked into licking that wall. Because face it, getting men and kids to do dumb things is relatively easy. Getting adult women to do dumb things, obviously dumb things, takes a little bit of doing, and when I can pull it off, I'm quite pleased with myself. And my wife can always tell when I've had a good wall day. If I get home after work and I'm still smiling after I-70 traffic, it's either been a good day for tips, or once again, I have talked an adult paying customer into licking the wall inside of mine. How many adult women do you think I've got in here?
So you have any volunteers?
Well, I'm not seeing any so far. I'm studying the body language, and usually it gives it away. I'm not seeing anyone looking to join the ranks on this particular tour. But that's all right, because I've got another one today. So far, I've managed to talk 120 adult women into licking the wall. And plus, this season, for the first time ever, unprecedented, at one point, the women actually outnumbered the men. At one point, I was like 117 ladies to 109 men on the wall score. And that went on for almost 3 weeks. And very good. And like I said, I'm good at reading body language, and I'm not seeing any telltale signs that someone wants to join the ranks here. But that's okay, because I got another tour today, and I'm hoping to get the numbers up to 125 if all possible. We'll see. So you've got a flashlight, that's it. All right, so I'm going to put you in charge. You're going to go back under Jim Beam, but you're going to turn right.
Okay.
You're going to go through the room with the benches.
Okay.
Come up on a gate, push the gate open.
Okay.
When you guys go through the gate, get a crouch going. It's low there.
Okay.
When you go through the gate, you'll go about 50 feet inwards. You'll see 2 excavations and a stack of 3 wooden boxes.
Okay.
That's where you stop.
Okay, cool, sounds good.
You take directions well. A lot of other people just take off, and it's like, no, there's directions. So I'm going to be the last one out because I've been trained in hand-to-hand combat with Tommy knockers or ghosts that haunt the mind.
They never gonna lick where everyone else is licking.
Well, the taller you are, the better advantage you've got.
I was just saying.
Yeah. Generally, the higher up you go, the less chance of cross-contamination. And if people are worried about germs, I'd like to point out that the lead in there will kill any germs. people going the right way, that's a start. And I'm confident that he will stop in the right spot. All right.
Keep on going straight, I guess.
Nope, that's exactly where you want to be. So I'm going to pass by on your right. Very good.
Better call him back.
Oh, wait, they kept going.
No, he's
I was going to say, I thought they stopped there. We'll eventually catch up to them. There's no escaping here. So, very good, by the way.
Thank you.
So, on either side of the main tunnel, we've got these excavations, and they're purposely dug. They're called step-outs or hides. When you came through the portal, you might have seen there was a sign that says, "Know your step-outs." These are the step-outs. Side tunnels also count as those. It's anywhere where you can get out of the main tunnel for any number of reasons. One, there might be ore carts or guys coming out that you don't want to encounter. But also, once a day in the mine, you're going to have a dynamite shoot, a blast. Usually it's about hour 9. It takes a solid 8 hours for the men drilling by hand to create the bullseye pattern in the wall of 1 foot deep holes that you put the dynamite into. And so let's say that yesterday the guys got about to that second lantern on the right. So right there, that's just a blank stone face, except it's now been had the holes added to it. Once the guys finish drilling the holes, the jackers or the drillers will leave the area. You bring the blasters in. They set the explosive, fuse it up. Before they light the fuse, they're going to yell, "Fire in the hole!" 3 times. Anybody here is firing the hole, they know it's going to happen. 3 minutes from now, there's going to be a series of explosions, between 1 and possibly 4 explosions, 1 for each ring of dynamite that's detonating. And each explosion will create its own shock wave that will be forced down this tunnel and out the portal. If you get caught anywhere in the length of the main tunnel by that shock wave, it could kill you, or at least mess you up very badly. And you don't want that. And a shock wave travels at the speed of sound, 720 miles an hour. So Harrison Ford cannot outrun that, despite what he might have you think, or specifically the scriptwriters. But basically, once you light that fuse, you've got 3 minutes of escape time, and if you can't get all the way down and around that corner and into that side tunnel, you're going to get caught by that shock wave, which could be very bad for you. So that's why they have these, they're a lot closer. Now all you got to do is run from there back to here and simply step out. And as long as you're out of the main tunnel when the explosions happen, the shock waves will pass by and leave you relatively unscathed. I say relatively because I think most miners are deaf as a post pretty early in their career. Actually, at one point I was doing a school group and I asked for questions, and this kid raises his hand and says, "Yeah, if everyone's deaf, why do they yell fire in the hole?" And I said, and I quote, That was actually a really good question. Typically speaking, I think they were deaf, but generally speaking, the explosion, the shoot, was always right around hour 9, because it would take that long to get the holes drilled. And plus, after the explosion, they wanted about an hour for the dust to settle and the dynamite fumes to dissipate before the next shift comes in. And when the next shift comes in, the first thing they do is they haul the fractured rubble out. That's called mucking. They load it in the cart, they bring it outside, they dump it on the ground, they do a quick eyeball inspection. Any argentiferous? No, it's just granite. Okay. And now we go inside and we just start the whole process over again. And by the way, if a stick fails to detonate, you know whose problem that is? The next guy. How was your shift? Pretty good. Oh, by the way, we had 2 dead shots there. That's for you guys to worry about. Bye. See you tomorrow. That kind of stuff didn't just happen yesterday. It's been going on forever. So let me take you forward here. We're going to head down the main. You guys, all right. Yeah, you know, it's loaded. All right, now you guys are walking down the main conveyance tunnel, which was designed to be straight. They did a pretty good job of that. You walk past a side or drift tunnel right there, and I'm standing in another one here. So all that means is they found veins of argentiferous, and they chased them till they exhausted them. The drift tunnels are dictated by the drift they're following, so they tend to be pretty twisty. This one also presented on that side, so they did some excavation. It petered out quickly, so they stopped. They use that excavation as a secondary step out or hide, but that also does double duty as your 4-star mentor. So I told you about the P-ditch. When you're underground 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, you're gonna occasionally need to do more than the P-ditch offers, and so that is your option right there. They put a couple of logs in there, took the bark off, which is how they got the 4-star rating. And behind the logs, there is a wooden explosive box, which already comes packed with wood shavings to cushion the dynamite. That is just reconfigured as a cat box for miners. In this tunnel, the main tunnel, that is a fixed location. If you're working in the lower 2 or the upper 3 tunnels, at one point when that becomes necessary, the miner would call for a runner boy to bring him what he called the necessary box. These guys were Victorian British and quite proper. So it was called the necessary box. And it would be the job of the runner boys, the boys between 10 and 12, who run up and down the tunnels looking for tools that need sharpening. As the necessary box becomes full, it would also be their responsibility to run it out of the mine down to the creek where they would empty it out, wash it off, and bring it back inside. And if you guys know any boys between 10 and 12, we're always looking for applications for that. And we're keeping it authentic at 50 cents a day. Some of the larger mine operations would actually have a latrine car that would ride on the cars. But this mine was not big enough for a luxury like that, so you got the necessary box right there. And the men also learned that if you actually wanted to sneak raw ore out of the mine, it was dangerous to try and do it on your own person, because if you got caught high grading or stealing ore from the mine, a supervisor could shoot you on the spot. But they learned pretty quickly that the supervisors didn't care much about inspecting the necessary box. So that's where you put it. Which I just enjoy, because it tells me that guys 150 years ago were exactly the same as we are now. Everyone thinks that you go back in history and people were all proper, and people were just the same as 1,000 years ago. Everyone is exactly the same as they are now. Well, we're a little bit shorter, that's about it. So I'm going to take you forward, once again, give credit. Very good. So let me take you up this way. We're coming up on the end of the tour where we actually got some benches to sit down on for a while.
Yep. That's funny. Yeah.
That opposite wall is heavily coated with that white calcite, and we're forming a calcite lake here, which is an unusual phenomenon underground. Typically, you don't get a lot of calcite lakes because you need a flat location for it to occur. And so what's happening here is the water's dropping down with a bunch of calcite, and right there, what looks like cracked and dirty ice is that mineral calcite, which is re-solidified. Over here, the rocks look like they've been dipped in wax. And right there, there's these little white pebbles called cave pearls, and they are just like regular pearls minus the oyster. It's a grain of sand that gets coated with calcite, and as the water replenishes the supply, the diameter of the pearls will increase. I've been looking at them for 8 years now and can't tell you any difference at all. So it's a pretty slow process. So I'm going to send you forward here. You see the benches up there? Head to the benches, grab yourself a seat. Now, if you get dripped on while you're walking underneath here, the miners considered that good luck. They called it being kissed by the mine. So these guys thought that women underground are a bad idea, and cold water on your neck is a good one.
Lunchtime.
All right, now if you guys are curious how I just lit those candles, this is an 1878 prototype of a big lighter. I got it on eBay down in Denver. They've got a new category called dubious antiquities. My wife thinks I got taken on this deal, but I like to point out to her that it works. That would have been a great time for it not to work. I'm gonna reach right between you two right here. I wanna get to a switch back here. I'm gonna kill these lights momentarily. And this gives you something of an idea of a miner's environment. And this isn't even as accurate as it should be because I've got 2 candles burning here, which would be unlikely to occur. Typically, the men would work by 1 candle at a time because candles were the only form of illumination they had. And for every 10-hour shift, they were given 9 hours worth of candles. So they get to deal with an hour of darkness on every single shift. Typically, if they were taking a break or eating a meal, or a lot of times if they were just walking from one point to another, they would make that walk in the complete darkness. They were hoarding their candles for when it was really important, and that's when you're swinging a sledgehammer really close to your buddy's head and vice versa. And plus, we've got light spill coming in from that direction, which would not be occurring. That tunnel would be as pitch black as that tunnel. And what we don't have, which I'm okay with, is a big cloud of rock dust. Back then, everything the miners did would create dust. Whether you're drilling the wall by hand or using the Widowmaker drill, it creates a lot of rock dust into the air, and that rock dust just hangs in the air. It makes it more difficult for the men to see, but it's also toxic when they breathe it in. You guys are familiar with black lung, I'm sure? So black lung affects coal miners, and that's carbon-based coal dust. Around here, the rocks are not carbon-based, they're silica-based, but the differences are rather semantic. The end result is when you inhale a lot of silica dust, it kills you. You end up with a disease called silicosis, and the miners just called it brown lung or miner's lung to differentiate it from black lung. Average lifespan of a miner back in those days was about 45 years. And a lot of the miners up in the cemetery up in Plume have cause of death listed as pneumonia. Pneumonia might have killed these guys, but it wouldn't have if they weren't already compromised with silicosis. So miners are very good at reutilizing, repurposing everything. So one day a miner brought a tin can, and back then cans were actually made out of steel or tin. Presumably it had beans in it. He opened up the top, took out the beans. That was lunch. That's a good time. Then it occurred to him that, if I put a hole in the side of this candle, in the side of the can, I can put a candle into that can, and now I've got a focused beam, essentially the world's first flashlight. It's called a shadow key, and it is candle powered. I'm probably not blinding you guys with the brilliance of this, but it is sufficient that I can read the walls, I can read the geology of the wall here, and I can see what I'm looking at here is vestiges of Argentiferous, and also rose quartz, which is a very indicative, it's a good mineral to find. If you can find either rose or white quartz in close proximity to black iron, very good chance you're gonna find a good ore, silver, or maybe even gold nearby. And then they even got fancy and put a bunch of small cuts in the far end to give you a diffuse light. So now I can read what's in this box, which reads Morse explosives. Yeah, not the kind of place you want to be standing with a candle. And the smartest thing about the shadow key is this wire handle on top, because the can itself heats up to the surface of the sun right quick. Discovered that my second day of the job. Always grab the handle. So I don't need this candle anymore, so I'm going to extinguish it. And this is the only proper way to extinguish a candle when you're working underground. you absolutely never blow a candle out. There was a lot of superstition underground, and blowing a candle out was one of the big ones. If you blow a candle out, you've just blown away your good luck, and that means you're gonna have a bad day, you might be caught in an accident, you're not gonna find any silver, and on a really bad day, you might attract the attention of a Tommyknocker, which you do not wish to do. You wanna keep Tommyknockers as far away from you as possible. There's a lot of superstition in the mine. Don't blow out a candle. 2 things you were never supposed to do while underground were singing and whistling. Some of you are right now thinking about Walt Disney. If Walt Disney had done 30 seconds of research, he would not have condemned generations of innocent dwarf miners to be haunted by doing literally exactly what they're not supposed to do, which is whistle as you work. The superstitions extended into the actual jobs they did. When you're drilling a hole, when you strike your drill bit, every time you strike it, you're supposed to turn your drill bit a quarter turn to the left. That's called shaking. What shaking does is it encourages the debris in the hole that you just created to fall out of the hole. And if you don't sufficiently shake and enough rock debris stays in that hole, under the right conditions, it can reform kind of rapidly. And if things go wrong, it'll trap your bit in that hole and you won't be able to get your bit out. And if you trap a bit in the wall and you exit the mine without it, you're going to be charged for that bit, which no miner wants to pay. And you might also be sued. Well, no, you won't be sued. You would be fired. I don't know where sued came from at all. You'd be fired for not following proper procedure. So, I'll get this light back on so you can see what it is I'm talking about. It always takes a while for these things to come back on. I'm always wondering if they're going to. So, you guys saw the pneumatic drill back there by the hoist room. We walked past it. That pneumatic or air-powered drill did not make a lot of impact in this mine, simply because by the time that technology showed up, mining was almost done. They didn't know that silver mining was going to stop as quickly as it did. But yeah, when it did, these silver mines closed up, most cases overnight. This mine is actually the exception to that. This mine worked until 1896 because they determined there were sufficient quantities of lead for the miners to extract in place of the silver. But by 1896, they had also eliminated all the lead in here. So at that point, they did close for good. But the vast majority of the tunnels were not created with that pneumatic drill. The owners loved the pneumatic drill. They called it the 50-50 because it eliminated manpower by 50%. At the same time, it increased productivity by the same 50%. The guys that ran it didn't like it as much. They called it the Widowmaker because it killed them and they knew it. It could kill its operator in many different colorful ways, but typically the way it killed its operator was it simply did its job. It generated 10 times the amount of rock dust into the air that drilling by hand does. And because the machine reciprocates, it goes back and forth, when it comes back at the operator, that draws all that dust right back into the operator's face. So when you're running that drill, you're inhaling 10 times the amount of silica dust that anybody else would be. And they knew that was happening, and they knew that it was a death sentence to run that drill. Typically speaking, if you started running that drill, you had about 5 years left to live. And on the positive side, they would double your pay for that. So instead of getting $2 a day, you'd be getting half your pay, which would be up to $4 a day. The way that it seemed to me is if I'm back then, and I know everyone dies around 45, on my 40th birthday, I would start running that drill, figuring, why not? Might as well double my pay for the last 5 years of my life. The way I think now, though, is completely different. My goal in life is to outlive everyone I've ever met. That includes all of you. That includes school groups. I tell these kids, you guys will have long and fruitful lives, but at the end of it, I'll still be here. Look for me. I'll be the old guy.
When they had the dynamite blast, when they went through the tunnels, did they extinguish all the candles? Or, I mean,
my guess is, yeah, if there really weren't that many candles burning at any one given time.
okay.
These lanterns are, I wish these weren't here. These are simulated kerosene lanterns, and they're in here so that you guys can see and you don't trip, and I get that. But I would like to come up with an alternative for them, because these are incorrect. Miners would never use kerosene lanterns underground. Kerosene, it burns a lot of oxygen, and it puts out a lot of smoke. So that's why they use these beeswax candles, because they do very little of either. Yep, so, but yeah, typically the miners, they didn't even have enough for their full shift. So if they usually were burning a candle, it meant that they were jacking, they were drilling the wall by hand. And that means you're swinging a hammer really close to your buddy's head, so that's why you got the illumination. But my guess is, usually by hour 9, when most of the shoots would happen and the shock waves would go down the tunnel, at that point there probably wouldn't be any lit candles back behind where the men were working. There's actually a situation in the tunnel as we came in where there's a black liquid coming out of the wall, and that's called dragon's blood. And what dragon's blood actually is oxidized silver. So that never happened when the mine was operating, because if the men had ever seen dragon's blood, we wouldn't, because they had put in a tunnel right there. At that point, you're not guessing there might be silver there. The dragon's blood says, yeah, it's right here, come in. It might be 3 inches back, it might be 10 feet back, but it's there. It's a big sign for that. But the dragon's blood did not exist when the men were working there, but there is a 2-inch wide finger of white quartz, which is going through the granite, which points directly to that spot. And I'm kind of surprised that the men never really noticed that quartz. But probably the reason they didn't is once the tunnel is complete, you don't walk through there with a candle anymore. You just walk through in the dark. You're not, theoretically, if the tunnel's complete, it's been inspected, they missed it the first time, then they missed it every time afterwards also. But, yeah, my guess is, yeah, it wouldn't make that much of an impact on the candles themselves. All right, so the way that they actually dug these tunnels is a system called jacking. Jacking is synonymous with drilling. There's single and double jacking. Single jacking just means I'm doing everything myself. I'm holding my steel, I'm striking my steel. And every time I strike the steel, I give that quarter turn to the left, that's the shake. And by the way, never turn your bar to the right. It makes no physical difference whatsoever. It achieves the goal. But if you turn your bar to the right instead of to the left, you just violated a big time superstition, and a Tommy knocker is on his way to Saigon. You just don't want that. We don't even know why you're not supposed to turn your bar to the right. It was so widespread that no one ever wrote it down, and then they all died. So we don't even know. Might have something to do with righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, but that's just a guess. But the thing is, you can't really get a lot of penetration through hard rock like this when you're swinging a 3-pound hammer with a single arm. So typically the men would simply start a hole here, or more likely an indentation in the rock, and then you would switch over to the real deal, which is double jacking. Double jacking is the same thing, but now on a larger scale. So now it's a 2-man operation. So now my drill steel is considerably longer, because this is going to go on my shoulder and against a rock. So I'll be facing the rock with this bar on my shoulder, and my partner, the striker, is going to be swinging a sledgehammer in this physically constricted and very light-deprived environment 200 times as hard and as fast as he can. And his whole target is that candle's reflection at the end of this bar. So you saw how dark it was. Now imagine that with a bunch of dust in here, and that's your target. This tiny little pinprick of light that is 2 inches behind my right ear and my head. And that's what he's aiming for the whole time. And every time he strikes, I shake and I count. And when I get up towards 200s, I got to tell him to stop. So 198, 199, 200. 200, I got to tell him to stop. But I can't just yell, hey, Tom, stop, because he's deaf as a post. I probably am too. We've been teamed up since we were 14. And if I turn around and say, hey, Tubby, this is when I catch a snout full of hammer. Don't want that. So instead, after the 200th hit, without turning, I'll take my right hand, slide it back, and cover. I cover the target. And what I'm doing here is I'm blocking the reflection. As soon as my hand covers this, it eclipses the tiny pinprick of light, And hopefully my guy back here is not balancing his checkbook in his head or wondering what his wife is going on about or whatever. And if he's paying attention and he sees the sudden succession of light, he will stop. And that gives me the opportunity to take this out, drop it on the floor and forget about it. Now it's the runner boy's problem. And I'll have another sharpened one ready to go. And we'll just keep going. And usually it would take at least 2, sometimes more bars per hole to get a foot deep penetration in this rock. And at one point, actually they tried an alternate to palm blocking, they called that. They tried something called thumb blocking for one shift. It did not work. The problem when you put your thumb there, you got a thumbnail. Thumbnail reflects the light just about the same as the bar does. So the one shift they tried that, which was, I bet you that was on a Monday too. They had any number of guys coming out of the mine with broken thumbs, and at least a couple broken noses, because my left hand is really good. But that's pretty much how it worked. And it worked very well after a while, because you just have guys doing the same thing over and over. Now, I've mentioned the term Tommy knockers a time or two. You guys familiar with that?
No.
All right, let me clear that up. Most, if not all of the men that worked in this particular mine were from Cornwall, England. Anyone from England, any man from England is referred to as Tommy. And so it's a pretty easygoing nickname for any Englishman. My people are actually from Scotland and Northern Ireland, so we have a lot of expressions for the Brits. And Tommy is about as good as it gets. But everyone in the mine answered to the name of Tommy, whether it was their name or not. And if you died in the mine, even if they retrieved your body, it wasn't always possible, but they usually did when they could. But the idea was, if you died in here, your ghost would remain in the mine, and your ghost is now what they call a Tommy knocker. Tommy knocker will announce his presence with a rapping sound against the wall. And either he's doing that to annoy you, or very occasionally a Tommy knocker will help you. The only reason a Tommy knocker is going to help you out is because it helps him out. The only way a Tommy knocker gets to leave the mine for good and go to the next plane of dimension is the Tommy knocker has to do a good deed for the surviving miners. And a lot of times the good deed would be he would warn them against about an impending danger. Like say the Tommy knocker knows this section's about to collapse, and there's a bunch of us miners in here and we're taking a break. We'd be sitting here in the complete darkness. You don't need a candle to sit around doing nothing. So we'd be sitting here in the absolute complete darkness, but we wouldn't be making noise of our own. That's the important thing. And we're sitting here in the dark, and we start hearing this. Really does sound just like that. We would interpret that as a warning from the Tommy knocker, the ghost, that this is dangerous here and we should leave. And if we went to a different part of the mine, typically closer to the portal, say we get up and leave, this section collapses, Tommy knocker has now met his obligation, and now he's free to leave the mine. But that's the only time a Tommy knocker will help you out. All the rest of the time, he's a real hindrance. He's an angry, spiteful ghost of some guy that you used to work with, and God help you if you owed him money before he died. This would be, and the thing is, most of the guys that worked here really did believe in the Tommy knocker phenomena. You saw how dark it was, and I never even showed you guys total darkness, where I'd, turn off all the lights and no candles. That's pretty dark. And you spend your whole life in darkness like that, and there's all this dust. You can never see anything, and men and boys died here, so the idea of the mine being haunted was not that far-fetched for the guys that worked here. And now would probably be a fun time for me to tell you all my cool ghost stories. And it won't take long. I don't have any. It's disappointing, I know. I took this job 8 years ago because my wife said, and I quote, get a job. Second, she provided me with a classified ad for this whole place, and that ad said trains, mines. And then she says, unnecessarily, you're a dwarf, you'll be great at this. I know, it was 2017. I said, honey, we don't even say dwarf anymore, we say little people now. And technically that's not us. We're not tall, but our proportions are correct, so yeah. On the other hand, if Peter Dinklage wanted an understudy, he asked for me, I would take the gig, absolutely. But I've already worked for Brad Pitt, that was fun. He was a lot younger, and we were about the same height. At some point, something happened. So, so I came to work here as, I thought I was gonna work on the train because I actually know stuff about the trains. But when I walked through the office, my supervisor took one look at me, and before I said anything, she said, "You are mine." And I said, okay, I'm actually spoken for, that's why I'm here. But I said, how do you know about my vast knowledge of American history and industry infrastructure? And she says, I don't, you're short, you'll work in the mine. I said, okay, good, that works, and it does. But I've been kind of hoping I'd see some Tommyknockers. I would like the mine to be haunted, it makes sense for me to be haunted. I've gotten a lot of stories from the other guides. Tina, the woman who gave virtually every one of you a flashlight, she's really generous with flashlights, I'm not. She's my supervisor. She is a fascinating woman. She's former law enforcement and military and EMT, so when stuff goes wrong, she runs towards it rather than away from it. She's been struck by lightning twice,
Wow.
including once while underground.
Wow.
You gotta work really hard to be struck by lightning when you're in a mine, and yet she's pulled it off. She is of the firm opinion that there's a higher power that is looking out for her. I believe there is a higher power, and it is angry with her. You don't get hit by lightning by a happy guy, the way that I see it. But Tina can tell you ghost stories all day long. She's had lots of interaction with the Tommyknockers. A lot of the lady guides that work here have similar stories. And the only people, as a rule, that have seen Tommyknockers on my tours are women. It's always women that see the Tommyknockers. And my theory on that is the Tommyknockers reveal themselves to the ladies because you ladies aren't supposed to be here. When the mine was operating, women never went underground, and the Tommyknockers are either upset by your presence in the mine, or perhaps are excited by your presence in the mine. After 140 years, the other Tommyknockers probably aren't looking any better to them. But this has happened a few different times with me. I'll be back there at the step outs, and I'll be talking, and I'll notice that a couple of women are pointedly looking past me and down the tunnel. And they just keep looking that way, the way they cats do sometimes. And I turn to see what they're looking at, and I don't see anything. But I know they're gonna ask me the question, it always comes up. Hey Jimbo, who's the guy in front of us? There is no man in front of us. We're the only people in the tour. Well, no, a man came out of the tunnel by the ladder there, and he came out and he looked at us, then he turned and he walked down the tunnel, and then we lost sight of him. And I'll say, okay, what did the guy look like? And they always say, he looked a lot like you. I look like every miner that ever worked here. I really do. I have a spit image for pretty much every one of them. But he's not wearing a hard hat, and he's wearing a white button-down shirt. In which case I will tell them, okay, his name is Tommy, and he's dead. You saw a ghost. And I didn't see him, and believe me, you would know if I did see him because I'd be hopping up and down, because I've been waiting to see one for 8 years. I've never seen anything with my own eyes in real time that I cannot explain. On 2 different occasions, I have heard that Tommyknocker sound, and it sounds just like that, it really does. It just sounds like someone banging on a wall with a hammer. It was actually in the upper mine in an off season when I was up there. I was the only one in the mine. I had a safety outside, but I was inside doing some pre-excavation safety check essentially. And I'm the only guy in there, and I start hearing bang, 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 bang. And I'm thinking, well, that is interesting. I didn't do that. Followed by, okay, I'm going to see a Tommyknocker. This will be a fun day. Followed by the more rational part of my mind saying, or what you just heard is the sound that rocks make as they rub against each other, which is what happens just prior to a collapse. So why don't you go outside for a while? Leave the Tommyknocker in here. And of the 2 choices, I would prefer a ghost to a rock collapse, because ghosts are intangible and rocks aren't. So, yeah, if they can't touch me and I can't touch them, I don't know really what the problem is. Really, when you think about it, all ghosts really have in their pocket, as far as I can tell, is that jump scare when they first meet you. That's it. Everything after that, they don't. If they can't touch you and you can't touch them, what's the problem? And if you guys come back here a year from now, my hair's all white and I'm really twitchy, then I was proved wrong. But so far that hasn't happened. Usually if I'm working, I'm the guy that does the morning inspection because I'm known as Ghost Proof Jimbo. The ghosts just do not bother me. I've never seen one. I've never had a bad experience with one. Most of any number of the ladies that work here will not do the inspection on their own. They simply refuse to do it. Don't even put them on the first tour because it's just not gonna happen. One of them, her name is Tina, and she's another kind of tough lady. She's from Austin, Texas. And the last time she did a solo tour in here, right at the gate, there's a switch to put on emergency lights, which you can do. I don't use them during an inspection because I want to see the mine the way that you guys see it. And she says the last time she came in here, she flipped on the emergency lights, and as soon as she did that, she heard a small boy that sounded like he was standing right next to her say very clearly, "It's too bright." So she flipped the lights back off, turned smartly on her heel, and rather briskly stepped out of the mine. And as she went past each of the drift tunnels, she says she heard men's voices, and they were like muttering. And she couldn't make out exactly what she's saying, what they were saying. But at the same time, she got the impression that they were talking smack about her, which does kind of make sense. So that's the last time Cena did an inspection, or actually she actually does mostly retail now, when I think about it. But she's a really good guide and a tough lady, but I mean, it remains to be seen. If I ever actually see anything that I just really can't explain, I guess I'm just gonna, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm kind of hoping I'll go, oh cool, a dead guy. Actually, here's a great one. We're doing a haunted mine tour in October where we're focusing on the paranormal aspects of the mine because it is said to be haunted. And so when you do a haunted mine tour, these aren't on, there's no electricity, it's nothing but candles in here. And there's 4 different actors, I was one of them, portraying Tommyknockers. I was in the hoist room. Tina was right there by that stupid skeleton, and that wasn't there at the time. And her group came in, she stood up, starts doing her routine, and then she notices that not one person in that group is actually watching her. They're all looking behind her, which is an interesting sensation. That's behind me. She turns around, and there is in fact a Tommyknocker standing directly behind her. And not only that, but in all likelihood, it's the guy she's pretending to be. She's pretending to be a guy named Charles Fenning. He was one of the only men in here that we actually have a very solid story of how he died. He died in that tunnel back there by the ladder. He blew most of his left leg off. I'm gonna retract between here. Extended tour acknowledging high. Oh, we are surfacing out. And so he didn't die right there. He actually got himself all the way to the portal and not quite out of the portal when he died. So he did die with the outside light in his eyes, which I think was one of his goals. But I think he was actually hoping to get all the way outside. Because I believe if he'd gotten outside before he died, he wouldn't be in here now. He would not have become a Tommyknocker. At least that's the way it seems to me. But he didn't, so he's still in here. And Tina turns around and sees this dead guy standing behind her. And then she turns around, ignores him, and keeps doing her routine. And the group eventually leaves, and part of the group was the company president, the guy that owns this place. When he got outside, he said to the guy, "That was amazing. How did we do that?" He thought it was some gag we did. The guy turns to him and says, "We didn't. What you saw is what you saw. Tina's, by the way, we left your employee back in the mine with a ghost behind her." And she did 2 more shows that night. Tough lady. All right, so we got a flashlight down here. We do. All right, I'm gonna have you lead us out of here. So we're gonna go straight down, back to the,
She's got the broken one.
Yeah, it's a little broken.
yeah, is there any better than this? Oh, is that one that keeps clicking off?
Yeah, you traded.
Yeah, we'll go right back to,
Okay.
and now the world is back as it was. So, you're gonna go straight down there, you're gonna go through the gate. When you come up on the gate, get a crouch going, it's low there. You're gonna go through the room with the benches, and when you get to the end, you will see the outside light.
Okay.
Go to the light.
Okay.
All right? When you get outside, you'll take off your helmets, and I'll get the group together and get you back up to the hill for your train. I'll be the last one out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Watch your head.
Right. We crouched over. Do what? I hope so. Oh gosh. That got me good.
Watch your head. See the light.
What are you using?
Watch your head. Watch your head.
Welcome back.
Very good.
All right, glad.